Hi everyone, so I'm going to go over the problem set that we did today. Okay, so if you look over here, Kathy buys a total of 416 grams of frozen yogurt for herself and a friend. She buys one large cup and one small cup. There you see the picture, it's on the scale, and we know the whole, they weigh 416 grams combined. So we look at this chart, we know that the large cup is 363 grams. We don't know how much the small cup is. But if you do know that you have, take a look at this tape diagram, a whole, which is 416 grams, and you know a part of that whole, which is 363 grams, that your unknown is going to be what's there. So you're going to take the whole minus a part, and then that's going to give you the answer to the unknown. But let's see what the questions actually ask us. So A says, estimate, that means that you're not going to find the exact answer yet. Estimate how many grams are in the small cup of yogurt by rounding. So when you estimate, you are going to round the numbers in the equation. You are not going to round the difference. So you're going to say the exact number would be 416, and we're going to round that. This doesn't tell you how much to round it by, right? So you decide. I'm going to round it but to the nearest 10. Okay. So 416 rounded to the nearest 10 is 420. And the other one, we're going to subtract 363 grams. Okay. We're going to round that to the nearest 10 because I just decided. So 363 rounded to the nearest 10 is 360. And now I'm going to do the subtraction of these. So 0 minus 0 is going to give you 0. We can't take 6 away from 2, so we're going to go to the hundreds place, and we're going to do some borrowing. So I'm going to cross that 4 out, which actually represents 400. I'm going to put that 3 there for 300. And then I'm going to cross this 2 out. I'm adding 10 to that 2, or I should say 10 tens, right? So that's going to become a 12. And then I'm going to say 12 minus 6, that is 6, and 3 minus 3 is 0. Okay, so the answer is 60 grams when I round by 10. So let's look at B. Estimate how many grams are in the small cup of yogurt by rounding in a different way. Okay, so you can choose to round to the nearest 100, or you can choose to round to the nearest 50. Let's just say you chose to round to the nearest 100. You would round the minuend and the subtrahend first. So let's say 416 rounded to the nearest 100 this time would be 400. And 363 rounded to the nearest 100 would be 400. And you're going to subtract those two. Oh boy, 400 minus 400 is 0 grams. Ay, ay, ay. So would that be a terribly accurate estimation? Probably not. Probably not the best way to round our numbers. Let's see if there's any difference if we round it by to the nearest 50. Okay? There's no right or wrong here necessarily. Just choose a number to round it up to or round it down to the nearest 100, nearest 50, nearest 10. Try for it. So this is the nearest 100. This one was the nearest 10. So let's see if we can do the nearest 50. So 460 rounded to the nearest 50 is going to be 400. And 363 rounded to the nearest 50 is going to be 350. So if you do that, you can do that by using the algorithm, or you can just say, oh, I know 400 minus 350 is 50, right? But if you want to see how to do that algorithm, 0 minus 0 is 0. Uh-oh, we can't take 5 away from 0, so we're going to take 10 tens away from the hundreds place, and we're going to put a 10 in this place. 10 minus 5 is 5, and 3 minus 3 is 0, so 50 grams. So this was the 3 ways I showed you, to the nearest 10, to the nearest 50, to the nearest 100. Okay, so let's look at this next question. How many grams are actually in the small cup of yogurt? The word actually tells us we really have to solve the problem 100% without doing any estimation or rounding. So let's take the whole minus the part. Okay, so start on the right side, start in the ones place. 6 minus 3 is 3. Go to the tens place now. Can I take 6 away from 1? Or I should say 6 tens away from 1 tens? I can't. So I have to go to the hundreds place. Knock, 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 knock. Hello? Hi, can I borrow 10 tens? Why, certainly. So that becomes 300. And right over here, we're going to cross this 1 out. And we add 10 tens, okay, plus 1 10 gives us 11 tens. 11 tens minus 6 tens is 5 tens. 300 minus 300 is 0. So we have 53 grams. That's the accurate or the exact answer to the problem. Last but not least, is your answer reasonable? Is this answer reasonable? Reasonable means, does it have reason? Does it make sense? So the way that you're going to decide whether your answer is reasonable or not is by looking at your estimates. Okay, so this was our exact accurate answer, 53. Let's take a look. Well, the 100, rounding to the nearest 100 didn't really help us all that much, right? It gave us an answer of 0. So possibly, but let's look at our other two, right? So when we rounded to the nearest 10, our answer was 60 grams. When we rounded to the nearest 50, our answer was 50 grams. Is 53 close to those two numbers? Oh, yes, it is. So our estimate tells us what we should think we should get, what would be a really close answer, right? Without solving exactly. And this is the exact answer. And so we're saying, is this answer close to our estimates? Yeah, it is. We would say it would not be reasonable, for example, if you did 416 minus 363 and somehow you messed up your numbers, you didn't know a fact or two, and you ended up with 726. 726 grams. So you would look, is this answer reasonable? Does it match what my estimates were? No. So then you would have to go back here and say, how did I mess this up? Where did I go wrong? Because this doesn't seem like it would be what an answer I should expect since I did these estimations. This is way, way far away from these two numbers, okay? So the answer, 53, is reasonable because it's close to our estimates. So which estimate was closer to the exact weight? Well, it depends on which ones you're talking about, right? We know that if you rounded to the nearest 50, that 50 grams would have been that. And we talked before about when you round to the nearest 50, the numbers are closer to the middle of like a halfway point. And so it basically balances itself out. I wouldn't worry too much about that. If you take a look at here, if you say 60 versus 0, for example, 400 minus 400 is 0, so that was far away from our estimate. And you see what we did is that we basically rounded to the nearest 100, and it canceled each other out 100%, right? It came to 0. Here, when you rounded to the nearest 10, you only rounded up 4 numbers from 16 to 20. And when you rounded to the nearest 10, you rounded down 3 numbers. So you only really made a difference of 7 numbers, right? 53, 60. Whereas here, when you were rounding to the nearest 50, you rounded 16 down, and you rounded much further. No, let me say this again. 16 down, and this, I'm going to do this. 3 plus, so 13 down as well. So you can just explain the difference between this and this, this and this, or you can say that one was rounded up, one was rounded down, that they were both rounded down, and talk about how far the numbers are away from each other. So if this is 416, this goes here, this goes here. I'm not 100% concerned on your your 1000% accurate explanation. As long as you have something to say about the numbers. What I'm more concerned about at this point is that you know how to round the numbers, that you know what estimate means, that you know how to do the subtraction, and that you know when an answer is reasonable or not. That's my major concern. So if you want more detailed information about the lesson 20, then you need to go on to Engage New York, Module 2, and look at lesson 20, and then you can see all of this information even more clearly, and you can practice it again. So I'm going to go to the back. I'm going to do the second page, and you can do that as well.